It has certainly been a remarkable year for Gary Rowett. Brought in to steer Blues clear of relegation, Rowett achieved that and then some. That initial target was quickly met, with Blues winning 8 of Rowett's first 12 games in charge. A 10th place finish followed, and the progress is showing no signs of slowing this season either. But how was this impressive turnaround being achieved, and what was he thinking when taking over a team that had just suffered an 8-0 home defeat?
I think ironically, in some ways, when you know there might be an opportunity potentially to take over, I suppose when you see that result, there's a tinge with two sides to the coin. I think one side of it says, wow, the team's in trouble, and the other side of it says, well, you know, can't get a lot worse. So it's not a bad opportunity time to come in. So I think it was tinged with, to be honest with you, I think it was mainly just tinged with excitement, the opportunity after working so hard to build something up at Burton in League Two and getting so close for the previous 2 seasons, starting so well that season, to actually have an opportunity potentially to manage a big club in Birmingham City that obviously I'd played at, so that I had that nice feeling about it, that I understood what it was about and I understood where the club could be potentially, albeit a different time frame. But so it was really just excitement, I think, for me and for all of the staff that obviously came with me.
The reception you got at your first home game against Watford, it must have been as pleasing as the result and the performance. I mean, what was that night like for you?
That was an incredible night, I think, just because it was obviously my first experience of a home game. I think when you look at the home form at the time was well documented, and obviously it was important that we got off to a good start, and you know, you dream about maybe winning the first one. I know it was a big dream at that time, but just feeling the atmosphere, I think there was a sense of I don't mean I'd achieved something or as a group we'd achieved something, but just the fact that we're at Birmingham City and you know, in front of almost 20,000 on the night and an amazing atmosphere just felt different to any experience I'd had as a player. So I can't really describe the feeling. Obviously we started very, very well, scored early on, but the feeling I got when Clayton, I think it was Clayton, scored the winner with about 8 minutes to go and you just heard the crowd erupt and then start singing Keep Right On straight afterwards, was a really eerie feeling. And I have to say, without me sounding like I felt as though we'd achieved something that night, you know, I went home and had a nice glass of red wine and it felt good that evening.
I mean, the team quickly started to pick up victories and keep clean sheets. What exactly did yourself and your staff do to sort of elicit such an upturn in fortune?
I think it wasn't any one thing. Obviously, I couldn't sort of go into every detail, but I think the main thing really was the main things were twofold. I think one, it was to get a structure in place that we felt could be defensively sound. For me, you build confidence by not conceding goals, and then to win the odd game or draw the odd game, you start to build some points up. And you know, I don't think you can go gung ho early on and risk losing games heavily. So that was the plan really, was to be a little bit tighter. After an 8-0 defeat, of course, you know, you would naturally start from a defensive perspective anyway. And I think the other big thing, and probably people can't quantify in some ways in terms of what happens on the pitch, but during the week, you know, it was really just to raise morale and try to be a little bit different from what was done previously. So I spoke to quite a lot of the staff. Spoke to them about 1 or 2 things that they felt happened quite a lot, and just tried to flip it around and be perhaps a bit more relaxed, or have a little bit of fun in the meeting room, for example, when they'd been quite serious in there. So, and I think the players felt a little bit of a weight lifted off their shoulders, perhaps.
We all know complacency is a pretty dangerous thing in football, but was there a moment in those early weeks and months where you sort of felt, you know what, this is a good team, we can do well here?
Well, I think the first thing you realise was that the previous management had brought some good players in, you know, and perhaps hadn't been playing with confidence. But yeah, I think, I mean, it's hard when anyone asks, were you surprised or were you pleased? You know, I don't think you're ever surprised, because I think you always back yourself that you can maybe come up with a solution to win games. But I think I have to say that the amount of games we won early on, and the way we got the points early on against some very, very good teams, I suppose was a pleasant surprise for me that actually our methods at this level had an effect, you know, albeit in that opening period.
You more or less kept the same side. There was a lot of continuity in your selection, and apart from one or two signings like Michael Morrison, Robert Tesher, Lloyd Dyer, you know, you had a very settled group. Obviously, you didn't feel the need to come in and rip things up and just start again from scratch, did you?
Well, I don't think we could, firstly. I don't think financially we're in a position where we could come in and bring 10 new players in if we wanted to, unless we got rid of 10 players. So I think the big thing for me was to try and get the most out of the players that we had. And again, by finding a solution to that. I think the other thing as well is, and to be fair to, you know, like Joe Carnell, Joe will always say one of the most prominent stats in the Championship, without me going on stats that much, but one of the most prominent stats is a settled side. You know, often the teams that use the least players will have success, whether that's because they're putting confidence into players or whether that's just that continuity of the same players. How do you get confidence if you're in, out of a side? How do you do that? You know, how do you get confidence unless you play 5 or 6 games and someone trusts you and says you will improve? You know, and lives with a couple of mistakes or lives with a couple of poor performances. I think that's in any walk of life. I think you always need someone to believe in you, and you always need someone to perhaps support you when things aren't going so well. And that was really the strategy early on. You know, we didn't have 25 top-class players, I didn't think, at the time. I felt we had a good nucleus, and it was going to have to be that nucleus that got us to where we wanted to be.
You closed the season with 3 successive 1-0 victories and finished 10th. I mean, did that exceed your expectations when you walked through the door?
Well, again, it's a difficult question to answer in terms of exceed our expectations. I think I have to say the first thought when we came in, we trained 2 days on the bounce, I think, when we first came in, and the team looked like they had no confidence. And at that point, there was a small part of me that thought, this is going to be a big job to keep the team in the division, keep the club in the division. And then I think when you start to see what they can do and you start to see them grow a little bit as a team and build, I think you realise then we can win any game we want to if we put our mind to it and we work incredibly hard. So I felt as though we could achieve something in terms of finishing higher up the league. Maybe to finish 10th in the end was probably a pleasant end to the season. And you know, listen, maybe that was higher than I thought we could achieve if you'd have asked me 2 or 3 weeks after coming in. But I've got a good belief in this team, and I've got a good belief in the squad. And I think they've churned out consistent results at this level.